welcome back to our YouTube channel. I am Chet Nichols, IFBB Pro, NPC Judge, and my wife Natalie, who is also an IFBB Pro and NPC Judge as well. And we are now with our second part with Laurin Conlin, and today we're going to talk about take it from yesterday being more food and eating and nutrition related to now to the gym floor. So we're going to talk about some training things, stuff that we hear a lot of times in the groups, and let's have some fun with this today. You ready?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you for having me back on. I appreciate it.
All right, right on.
So one of the things that I hear a lot lately is bikini competitors who are giving advice to other bikini competitors, and it typically revolves around that word bulking because they see that as getting jacked like a mother, looking like they're about to go in the bikini, in the bodybuilding with their little posing trunks and everything. But it doesn't. You do need to build some muscle in a bikini contest if you want to be competitive. If you just want to get up there and you really don't care where you place, don't bulk. If that's not for you, don't do it. But if you want to be competitive, you do have to build some muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this,
Laurin?
Oh, this is so. I can't believe this is still like a thing that people think, and I understand where people are somewhat coming from, like, you know, when you used to think about bulking or dirty bulking, right? Like just gain as much weight as possible, eat as much as you can, gain as much weight as possible, and then you're going to build as much muscle as you can, and then you'll diet it off. So understandably, if you gain too much body fat, it will be harder you have to get all that off. And obviously it's going to be harder to maintain muscle when you have to be that aggressive. However, I don't understand unless people are not going to shows, then they won't understand what bikini has turned into. So I started competing in 2011. I ended up turning pro in 2014. My body in 2014 as a pro is not even remotely close to what people look like today. I competed up until pretty much the end of 2018. And I've taken off. I'm kind of, I joke, semi-retired. But part of it is like I have a lot of other things going on, but then part of it is I am not going to step on stage until I look better than the last time that I competed because I'm simply not muscular enough. And in order to build muscle as a natural female who's been dieting for most of her life, that's going to take a lot of time to build. Now, there are...
You want to break that down just a little bit?
Yeah.
What is a lot of time? Give or take.
So honestly, I competed pretty heavily from 2011 to 2018. And really 2013 to 2018 was pretty much all competing. And I never really gave my body a lot of time to take off. We kind of alluded to it last podcast, but basically I would just diet for a long time and then I would eat for a few months and be like, oh, gotta prep again. And then I did that for years and years and years. And then at some point your body says, I'm done. And at the end of my last diet in 2018, I'd pretty much been stage lean for 3 months on top of already dieting for 6 months before that. So it was a 9-month prep, very, very lean, the leanest I've ever been for a very long time. And literally my body just said, no, like we're just super done. And that for all intents and purposes was the best I ever felt in a diet, like realistically speaking. And still, I think all the years kind of compounded. So basically it wasn't until a full year that of no dieting, so last September, that I actually felt back to normal. Normal. And then now it's February of 2020, and it's almost a year and a half. And I would say that now I'm in a position to where my relationship with food is pretty solid. Training feels pretty good. You know, hormones are stabilized, kind of all those things. But I still am not in a position to where I've made enough progress to be competitive. Could I get on stage? Yeah. But at the point of what they're looking for bikini as an IFBB pro and me as a natural tall competitor, just not cutting it. And I might not ever look like that, which is totally fine. And if I decide that I want to get on stage because I want to do it again, then I will. But at this point, about a year and a half out, I feel finally like I'm in a place where now if I really push it, I can, grow and I can actually recover and I feel good. But it took about this long in order to finally and that was because I did it for so many years back to back without really any break. But for people to really understand, like competing every year catches up. And if you want to do it for a few years, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like you can. And I understand being competitive, and I've done it. I've pushed clients too, to where it's maybe like kind of crossing that line of like, should we do this? But also like they're doing well and you understand the competitive athlete. Mm-hmm. So it's like, hey, let's push now. And then we got to take time afterwards. So there is a time to push, but there also is a time to be realistic to say like, wow, I haven't made enough progress. And the way that bikini looks now, even at an if anybody goes to NPC, like any kind of NPC national show, and you look at the first call up, the girls have muscle, like end of story. And the difference is too, people just think, oh, they're just lean. Yeah. But if you lean out and you don't have muscle, you just look skinny.
And at that body fat level, I've seen it before. You pretty much look anorexic if you have no muscle under there, because you're so lean.
No the face whatsoever. And all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and for all the people who think that, oh, it's just bikini, that's what it used to be. Mm-hmm. That's what it used to be. It's not like that anymore. Okay, it is. The girls are very lean. They have cap shoulders. They have abs. They have glute ham tie-ins. If you don't have a glute ham tie-in, you're not in the first call up. And that doesn't happen by accident. You know what I mean? You don't just have a glute ham tie-in. You know what I mean? Like most girls have to work really, really hard to not only build the muscular density back there, but also to get lean enough to get that. And I don't care how much people try and rush this, how much they try, whatever drugs they want to take to quicken the process. That helps a lot, but it still doesn't take away the fact that you have to take time off, because women's bodies are so sensitive hormonally to those body fat levels. It doesn't matter if you're natural or not. Being sub 10% body fat for any point in time is not natural for a female. And some people can get away with it. There's a handful of true ectomorphs and those are the people that, those are the people that I'm always trying to defend to my clients. Like, hey, this is why you don't look like this. Because so somebody is a true ectomorph and they've had to build all of their weight on, they can stay pretty lean. So there's a lot of people, they see my before picture, I was 100 pounds. Now I'm 120. That person is going to look ripped year round. You know what I mean? But for everybody else who has to lose weight to get on stage, which I would say is 90% of people, you're not going to be able, you know what I mean? Or more, you're not going to be able to maintain that body fat. And it's a really hard process. And which is why I try and show people like, hey, look at the body weight and the body fat that I sit at off season. Like most coaches, gurus, whatever you want to call them, would be like, oh my God, I weigh about 160 pounds. I'm 5'7". And when I get on stage, I'm about 127. Carved up.
Yeah.
Carved up.
Exactly.
So like and a lot of people would say that's too much body fat to lose for a prep. Well, I've done it multiple times. And this is the only place really that my body feels pretty comfortable at off season. And everybody's going to have a different level. Some people are built a little bit naturally leaner. And it's a difference if you're gaining this amount of weight in 2 weeks, which of course is not all just body fat, but you know what I'm saying? Like you're just blowing it out of the water, right? That's a lot different than like, adding weight over time and finally being at a weight that your body settles at. And I've been at this body weight for, probably over a year, and I look different at the body weight, which is an interesting thing that happens when you take time away from dieting, but also just in general, like, this is where I'm kind of settling, and I think a lot of people, and it's not because I eat like an asshole all the time, you know what I mean? It's not that, it's just like, hey, this is, and that is a thing. Some people just really blow it out in the off season. And I've been this way before, not looking like this. So there are differences, but it's going to be, it's really faulty, basically back to the original point of bulky and you don't need to do that. There's so many coaches who say, be 10 pounds over your stage weight. 10 pounds?
What do you?
I'm just starting.
How are you going to improve?
I wasn't feeling normal yet after I gained 10 pounds.
Oh my God, literally when I hit the 135 mark, that's when I go, oh, shit's real for prep. If I only gained that much weight, I would constantly be in a state of just like total distress and my body would hate me. And again, this comes back to genetically, like, where do you sit? And there's some people who are just going to be a little bit leaner. And our good friend, Dr. Joe, we were talking about one day and he's like, look at your dad. Like he was an offensive lineman. Like this is your body. Like you're a European stocky, this is what you look like. You know what I mean? And not saying it in a negative way. It's just like, if you were trying to fight that forever, that's where you have all these issues. And I see all these people like, oh, I'm always hungry. Oh, I'm always tired. Oh, my hormones are wrecked. Gain some body fat and you'll feel better.
Exactly. Yeah, she's only 4'11". Okay, 4'11 and a half. So she's a little bitty, and got to kind of put it in perspective. So
different.
Her, 10 pounds on her is a good chunk to somebody who's 5'7". But even still, she's about 15, 16, 17 pounds over stage weight. And I'd say you're just now where you're starting to feel pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's a good chunk for somebody her size, but she looks a hell of a lot better now at this weight than she did 2 years ago.
And
difference.
You guys, like you mentioned on the last podcast, most people listening here are competitors. So I always want to delineate for people who are listening, like I'm not, like anybody who's gaining weight for a show, like I've gained 30 pounds, right? Like I'm not necessarily overweight from a health perspective, right? Because my losing 30 pounds, I look like a Holocaust victim. You know what I mean? So it's a very,
right. And it's not attractive to walk down the street looking like that.
It's not healthy. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's a very unhealthy. So now if I gained 30 pounds on this body, that'd be a different conversation.
Right.
For anybody listening, like when we're talking about gaining these larger amounts of weights, this is not because like we're just trying to promote being unhealthy whatsoever. Like I'm actually probably the healthiest I've ever been in a long time for a lot of factors, and probably same for you. Like, and it's not like, oh, I want to like lose all these losing 15 pounds for you is shit's not all right. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like it's a whole different thing. And, particularly, like I said, women just get hit so hard with this just because of our hormones and because of just where our bodies like to kind of reside. So that when you are constantly pushing that needle over and over and over again and never giving your body a break, that's where we see all these issues with people. And that's why they have all these, not even, I would say disordered, I don't even say eating disorders, but disordered eating, disordered relationships with food. They might not be able to hold a relationship because their hormones are crazy. You know what I mean? And that's like a real thing people like struggle with, and people love to give names to everything. And it just cracks me up when people just give names to things like, oh, I just gained weight. It's like, congrats. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. Okay. Yeah.
That was a normal thing to do. You know what I mean? Like, wow, you're not hungry all the time and you feel like a normal person because you gained 20 pounds. Like, yeah, that's how it works. And if you resist that for a very long time, you will see those side effects. Now, that is why, and I'm all for pushing that because that is the reality of a contest prep, but that's also why you have to take away periods of, we'll call it bulking or off season or whatever you want to call it, because you can't do both. You know what I mean? Like you have to, you can't push all the way down at the bottom and then not push at the off season end as well. And a lot of women, and again, I always seem like I'm picking on women, but guys don't seem to care as much about the off season. Women want to push that lean look, but then they don't want to push that off season look. It's like, well,
but they want to come in looking differently. And that's the dichotomy there that people don't understand. They want to, like, you see everybody's got their photos of the last time they were on stage. And then they've got a little motivational thing on Instagram at the bottom that says, my plan this year is just to beat this girl. Yeah. But you did not take any time away from the stage. You did not build anything. You're very little over your stage weight, and you're just going to diet down, and you're going to look exactly like you did, maybe a tad bit leaner, but no added shape.
Yeah, and I'm sure you guys see this as judges all the time too.
Yeah.
Gosh.
See it so often, and you're excited for that person who was almost there to come back to the stage this year because you think
they're almost there.
They were so close last time. I want to be able to award that person a good placing because I see them on social media all the time. You see how hard they're working and how bad they want it, and they come back and they look exactly the same.
And why you didn't take enough time off? And that's what we tell people: take your time off. Take your time to build. That's a rare judging feedback, unfortunately. And we do
all the judges, of course. There's going to be different opinions and different judges, but standard feedback for bikini is, oh, you were holding water in your glutes, just get leaner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Those are the easy ones.
You can only get so lean when you don't have the tissue there. Yeah. But they even tell people that who just, I'm like, no, you need 5 pounds more muscle. Like, you know what I mean? And that's the thing. Like,
if you're leaner anyways, if you do that, if you're leaner when you're at that same body.
Exactly.
Body fat, you've got more muscle there. If you're still going to look leaner.
Absolutely.
So it's become, and again, it's not a knock on competing. I love it. When bikini first started, it was the easy division, right? And it was the beach body. Everybody can look like that. If that's what they kept, then, people could probably compete every year. But the look is not that anymore. You know what I mean? Like if you want to be successful, it's a lot different. You know what I mean? And it is not an easy attainable look anymore. And that's where I want people to get that out of their heads. Like bikini is not attainable all year round. That is not the goal of it. You know what I mean? There are some people who will be able to sit leaner. Yes. For the majority of women, you are going to have to take periods off. Otherwise your body will fight back. And we see this over and over and over again with top pros who do it for years, and then all of a sudden don't hear about them. They're up 40 pounds because they finally got off all the,
burnout occurs.
I would actually like to go back to something that you said earlier from your perspective as a competitor, as a pro. You said that when you got your pro card and you're competing as a pro, your physique looked vastly different than what a pro looks like today. In which areas? Because we tell people what we see as a judge, but where do you feel like as a competitor, the physique, which muscle groups are so different?
Yeah, what's changed?
I would say now, so my first 2 years competing as a pro, I could still hang, you know what I mean, up until about 2016. And then 2017, I had to take off because I had a pretty bad injury. And then when I came back in 2018, I mean, it was just like, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, it was just, right. And I would say that shoulders have always been capped, but it's definitely like and they always say, oh, we don't want capped shoulders. Yeah, you do. The judges want capped shoulders because it looks nice. You know what I mean? They want a tapered waist. Of course, that is not something genetically that people can alter. But the waist taper has changed completely just because of the quality of people who are doing shows. So more people are doing shows and better people are doing shows. So the girls that are doing the best, they're gravitating towards the really, really naturally tiny waist, which again, you cannot change, but that is something that I've noticed tremendously is tinier waist. And then of course, the biggest thing is glute hamstring density. And I say those words and I know that they're trying to stay away from that as far as like the judging criteria, in order to distinguish from different categories.
Especially but wellness coming in.
Yes, but that is like not even on the same planet, you know what I mean, as regular bikini. But the girls who are doing well at national shows and turning pro and girls who are winning pro shows have a density to their glutes and hamstrings that is very different than somebody who's been working out for a year or two. It is.
Yeah, you mentioned, looking at the judging criteria, and this is something we hammer in. There's two things we have to look at. You have judging criteria and you have judging trends. And they don't match up. And as a matter of fact, you can go from region to region, to show, and there's different trends in different areas and different shows. And you got to know that because you may go to a show where the past couple of years, and a lot of times the judging panels year after year are pretty same because they bring in mostly local judges and only fly people out if they have to fill a spot. So those judges are pretty much going to be looking for the same things. But you got to know that area because you go to one show who they may want somebody a little harder, go to the next show, they may want them a little soft. And as coaches know, we got to know how to make those changes. But as judges, we are judging, outside of the criteria. And you mentioned shoulders, man, we hammer that to people all the time now. You've got to have, they don't need to be striated and stuff, but you got to see
you have shoulder.
Yeah, I use the word.
And some triceps also.
I don't use separation or anything. I use the word distinction. There's a distinction between the shoulders and triceps and things like that. And a lot of times now, and in some areas, if glute and hamstrings are the gold standard from the back, which they are, then shoulders are kind of becoming the final touches nowadays. Are you seeing that over on your area?
For sure. Yeah. If you only have good legs and then your upper body just kind of flattens out or posing isn't right and you're just kind of hunched over or you don't really see it, like, no, you need to have that as well. You can't have too much because then that taper at the top will then be like, oh, now your bottom looks too small. You know what I mean? But yeah, you definitely need to have kind of that from the back. You need to have a little bit of lat width, which obviously helps your waist as well. And then the rear delts and like you said, triceps just kind of coming out. It's nowhere near figure, of course, like, you know what I mean? That's just a completely different thing, but you need to have muscle. So I think that it will depend on what show you do, will depend on where you're at. But in general, it's not like you just pick up somebody who's like, oh, I'm just going to work out a little bit. Like it takes a long time to build that, you know what I mean? And some clients have a genetic propensity to build muscle a lot easier. Other people do not, you know what I mean? So for those people, it's going to be a lot of years in order for them to actually see progress. And for myself, I can look a little bit more muscular now at this body weight because of the way that I distribute body fat and the way that I just kind of hold on to things, right? I'm somebody who kind of is a very like even body fat distributor. So, which helps in the off season, but then when I'm dieting, I don't really look lean until like I'm really lean. You know what I mean? 'Cause I don't really have any body part that like sticks out so crazy. But for me right now, like I look fuller and denser, but once I get to a certain body fat, it just kind of goes down. So I know right now I can't just trick myself into being like, yeah, I feel pretty dense, because I know as soon as I start dieting, it's just game over. So people have to understand that.
You kind of want to overbuild, because you're going to look so much smaller and you're going to lose quite a bit of the muscle. You're going to try and minimize that muscle loss, but you're going to lose some. Everybody does.
There's literally been one client that I've had in 7 years of coaching that I was like, we might be a little on the muscular end. And guess what? She got top 5 at nationals last year. So you know what? It's like, no, yeah. She looked great.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And we go on this a lot too. You know what? You're not going to build anything really when prep starts. So if you have a lagging part there, you kind of are a fucked, so to speak. You really are. So, but if you have something that's overdeveloped a little bit, you can bring that down by less training.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to take down the muscle than build it up in prep. So let's take this to the next part you wanted to talk about while we have some time. Training principles and aspects and stuff like that. Like we said, even bikini, you've got to build now. So when you're working with a bikini competitor, maybe it's a new client or somebody who's only done one show, and there's some significant improvements. When you're trying to program exercises or put the plan together, what are you looking for? And when they have this conversation with you, ooh, is that going to build too much muscle on me? What do you do?
Yeah. So my boyfriend now runs all of my training for my clients. My coaches handle their own training, but he does the training for my specific clients and also writes different programs that we have, just because he's very good at it. Obviously we work together. He's trained me for many years and, et cetera. But so basically when we're putting this together, the biggest thing that we actually do for people is bring down the amount of days that they're training and actually make the actual training sessions hard. So what a lot of people come in doing, like, oh, I want to train 6 days a week and I'm doing all these plyos, air quotes if you're not watching, and which is basically 30 reps of something, which is not a plyometric whatsoever. But they're doing all this hopping around and all this stuff and circuit training and just blasting themselves with sets of 30 and supersets. And it's like, dude, I love doing stuff like that too. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. Like I love that. But there's only so much that you can recover from. And typically when people are coming to us, we're trying to work their food up first. We're trying to work their food up before we even diet. And then we're trying to get the training intact. And people are just doing what I call just dumb shit all the time. You know what I mean? Like they're not really doing anything of substance. And not to say that everybody has to do compound lifts, like not saying that like squats and deadlifts are the best thing ever, but they're pretty good, right? So if you can actually, like if a client comes to us, it's like, hey, we want to work in a few compound exercises that like work for you, that can actually put on muscle kind of on your whole body and be a hard training stimulus. And then we'll fill in accessory work appropriate to you is really kind of where we start. And having people understand the foundations of, what those actually look like and what it actually takes to, train hard on certain exercises. Because a lot of people who are doing this now, because like I said, at one part, there's so many more people doing this and people who are interested in this. A lot of people don't have any athletic background. So they're coming to us and it's like, hey, send us a video of a squat. And it's like, oh my God, like,
Are you still walking?
This is terrible. You know what I mean? Like there's no way that you're loading anything appropriately. You know what I mean? So if we can get somebody, and I'm not talking about, hitting it hard, but like if somebody can go from not knowing how to squat to, hitting, a conservative max of 135, and now we're doing working sets off that, the amount of growth that they can see from just that is amazing. I'm not saying go squat 300 pounds. No, like that's not the goal. And some clients do end up doing powerlifting, of course. But the goal of a compound lift is to actually be able to load it properly and load lots of muscles at once and be able to progressively do that over time. And then, fill in the fun accessory work. But yeah, the two biggest things we have is just fixing actually form on things like that, just from simple cues, and people can actually load the muscles they need to. And then, dialing back the training frequency. Most people that we have train 4 days a week. And sometimes it's like a light 5th day, but we find that actually most people recover much better from actually just hitting it hard 4 days and being able to progress, and they're hitting PRs and they're keeping their strength and all these kinds of things. And it's much, much better than, oh, I'm going to do 6 days a week of just haphazard, like just, 18,000 hip extensions. And trust me, I love doing that stuff too. You know what I mean? But it's like, you can only do so much before, one, you're going to get an injury. And two, you're not going to be able to actually make progress over the long term.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of talked about a little bit what we actually do. We'll have like a 3 or 4 day workout schedule that we'll throw an alternate day in there. If you want to go, do this one. And it's going to be a lighter volume, lighter intensity, just kind of that they can get in there and feel like they did something, but it's not going to be anything that's too taxing. Almost basically go there, get a little blood going, get a little pump, hit a few things, call it a day.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're talking about there?
And there's some, and usually we'll do it for like lagging groups, you know what I mean? So a lot of the girls, it's going to be like a third glute. So we'll have 2 upper days, 2 lower days, and then like a third like light glute day, glute ham kind of day. And again, because that's kind of what most people want to work on. Sometimes it's shoulders too. But yeah, just in general, like I try to like really hammer home to people like, hey, like, you have a job, like you have stressors, like you have a family. You're not a professional athlete who gets paid $30 million a year to go work out twice a day. You know what I mean? Like you're not doing that. So for people to think that they can actually recover from those kinds of things, it's just crazy. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, no, you're not actually going to be able to recover. And then if we are in a dieting situation, that's a whole stressor in and of itself as well. So I think it's really important. I think I've talked to some of the, over time, people who have been doing this for a long time with not just like flash in the pan kind of coaches. And they all kind of stick to the same thing. Like 4, maybe a 5th light day is kind of what you need in order to grow and recover, which is such an important variable during, especially an off-season period, but even during the prep. And everybody's a little bit different. There's some things like some people can tolerate more than others. But what it is most people think they can tolerate it, but really the numbers show that they're not making any progress. So really taking a step back and saying, hey, let's just try this for a few months. I just want to try it and see if you can actually make progress. And if a client can make progress, you're asking like, what kind of conversations do I have? If a client is like, oh, I want to do more, and I don't know if I'm making any progress or have I gained any muscle or whatever, it's like, okay, last week you did this for 10 reps with 20 pounds, and now you can do it for 15 with 25 pounds over the past few weeks. That is muscle growth. You know what I mean? Like that's the best measure of muscle growth that we have. Like most people don't have ultrasounds. Like most people don't have these things where we can test muscle thickness, which has its own, issues in and of itself as well. So like if you are lifting more weight for more reps over time, you've probably gained muscle.
Yeah. And we'll wrap up here. One of the things, because I know you get short on time. Yeah. Because like we discussed earlier, you put that post on Instagram about your training volume. It really brought it down. Everybody, you should go to her Instagram page and see it. She has a couple of different videos in there, and you'll see she's doing really lightweight, even on hip thrusts. I mean, not even that much weight on the bar. And then she goes to and then some band work, and then some body weight work. Yeah. And you're bringing it down, but you're still going to be making progress, or at least holding your adaptations. You're not going to lose them.
Yeah, that would be like an example of like a lighter day, right?
Exactly.
So I might have right now, I'll have like a squat day or squat focus day, deadlift focus day, obviously accessory work around that. And then I might have a light third lower body day. It just depends on my travel schedule. If I'm traveling and I'm not sleeping, I'm not doing that. If I don't feel good, if I'm recovering from it, not doing that. I started doing jujitsu a few months ago. I've really gotten into that. So if I've had a really hard jujitsu week and I'm pretty smashed, I'm not going to go do that. But for all intents and purposes, if I'm home, I'm feeling good, everything's awesome, I'm going to go do that. So something which I wanted to show that kind of a workout. And so funny, just one little side note about hip thrusts. I love hip thrusts, right? I'm very good friends with Brett Contreras. We program them for clients. I absolutely do not think that hip thrusts take the place of other exercises, nor do I think that people have to load them heavy in order to feel them. So
yes, because you can't feel the
now there's definitely still
too heavy.
There's still definitely something going on if you're doing heavy hip thrusts. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty obvious, like with, all the people that Brett trains and all the stuff that we've seen, there's still something happening, right? Yeah. And the reason that people will load hip thrusts really heavy is because deadlifting or squatting is a lot harder. Obviously, a hip thrust is pretty straightforward. And if you're trying to coach somebody, especially if you're trying to coach somebody virtually who has shit form, loading up a hip thrust is going to be awesome. And they're going to feel good about hitting that heavy, right? Whereas learning how to squat and deadlift might take a long time and it's going to be really hard. So I understand why people do that. But I also don't want people thinking that they have to do that. And you'll rarely see me hit more than 135 on a hip thrust, maybe 185 if I'm like really trying to get after it. But I'm usually trying to do that for myself with squats and deadlifts because that's what I've tried to progress on. And then I will use hip thrust or hip thrust machine to, use that as more of kind of an accessory. That's how I look at more as like as
supplement to it. Yeah.
Yes. And it is a great accessory work because it doesn't bang you up like squats and deadlifts, you know what I mean? And you can do 95 pounds or you can do banded or something like that and still feel pretty fresh. So I think that it just depends on how people want to use it, but I'm not somebody who says at all that you need to do them heavy in order to get the benefit from them. And I would even argue that it's not necessary if you're doing other things too. But if you want to do it heavy and you don't hurt yourself and you like progress, go for it. I'm not saying don't do it.
Yeah, just don't. You're not getting a benefit if you're going lighter, so that you can really
exactly.
Yeah, right.
So I would like to end with just one tangent here, just as a coach who has a lot of bikini competitors, and I'd like to get your take on it as the coach side of things and also the athlete side of things. Whereas we know what our opinion is as judges, but I'm just curious, and I want to get your take for other people out there listening. If you have somebody who's got like a banging strength, like, I mean, their shoulders are bomb or their hamstrings are bomb or whatever this aspect of their physique is, how do you present that on stage? Do you try and show up that strength? What do you do?
So I would say that it depends on how balanced it looks, right? So if somebody has, for what we would call great shoulders, but it's overpowering, then I'll kind of tone it down. So perfect. I mentioned her earlier. I had this one client who, like I said, is probably the most muscular person that I've worked with in my career. And, you know, she's tiny, compact, but like when we got lean enough, she had striated glutes. She had not just a lot of cap shoulder, you know, the whole deal, right? Now, mind you, she was like 105 pounds, but still like super muscular, right? And dense. So for her, now because she had these striated glutes and she was super peeled, she was pretty full. I mean, as full as you can be for 105 pounds, but still wasn't like crazy, right? Her glutes aren't like this big. They're just really good shape and really dialed in. So if I have her like really show off her shoulders, which are also striated and very full, she can look unbalanced. So, and she's somebody who also has very straight hair like me. It just kind of looks better on her like whole package, right? So it's not like I could say, oh, have all this hair and you'll cover it, because she has straight, sleek look. That's just like her look. So I said, hey, when you go out there, we are not pumping your shoulders up. We are not flexing. You're literally putting your hand on your hip and dropping this. Because if you even hit something, it's going to be like game over. You know what I mean? So it just kind of depends, because that would make her look unbalanced. In the gym or just in general life, I'm like, oh yeah, you have the best shoulders ever.
Exactly. That's great for the Instagram. Great for the ego.
Yeah.
Not for the stage. You want to be balanced, symmetrical, nice overall package.
Yes. And it just depends on, now if she was super lean like she was and her glutes were very, very like 3D and like huge looking, then it might be different, right? Because then we can kind of balance it out. But I wouldn't want her to look like a figure competitor essentially, and just be very, very top heavy. So for her, it's kind of like you got to just tone it down and just look at the symmetry of the person. Likewise, if they have big lower body, because I have clients like that as well, who, you know what I mean, like just a little bit thicker on the bottom, no matter how lean we get, and their upper bodies just don't match. Well, you're hitting almost like a figure, like lat spread, like shoulder flex, in order to balance this out, because you're not getting any leaner this week, you know what I mean? So all we can do is widen this out and kind of flex a little bit more to look more symmetrical.
Yeah, and so you're working with the physique. Like, to clarify for the audience, what she was saying is her girl that's got these great shoulders, if her glutes were larger and more 3D, then she would be able to bring out the shoulders, because the glutes would create the balance there. And I just wanted to kind of make that point for people, because again, on the bikini groups and boards and everything, I see a lot of people saying, I've got really great whatever it is. So my coach has me posing so I can really show off. I really want the judges to see this great whatever it is.
Doing the service.
That is actually having the opposite effect. And the judges are saying, oh my God, look at her such and such. She has nothing else.
Exactly.
It's not balanced. That's not going to win you anything.
Yeah, and I'll wrap this up, so now you got to get going. And we tell people all this time, and we hear coaches say this incorrectly all the time: conditioning wins. No, a conditioning is part of it. You can be over-conditioned or under-conditioned, and balance wins, because balance is the physique balance. Balance is the conditioning balance. Balance wins. And if you have a strength, then somewhere you probably got a weakness. So you got to kind of take those things out. So Final
sure.
thoughts for you, Laura. What do you have here?
So final thoughts would be for the bikini competitor, really for every competitor, but particularly for the bikini competitor who feels that pressure of competing all the time because they don't need a bulk or because they need to stay relevant or kind of whatever they've gotten into their mind. Taking time off and coming back undeniably better will always do you a service, and competing because you think you need to stay relevant will always do you a disservice. It's not the days anymore where it used to be like, oh yeah, like, you know, there's a few people competing and if you show up a lot, the judges will reward you. Not anymore.
In front of the right judges. Yeah.
I have been going to shows since 2011, and now, you know, going, not just me competing, but going as a coach for the past years to pretty much all the national shows. It doesn't matter. Girls win all the time who you've never fucking seen before. And it's because they come out and they look the best. And if you come out and you look scrawny and haggard and tired, you don't have any muscle, you're not going to win. You know what I mean? So
wear Coach so-and-so's jacket around the
matter.
auditorium. It
doesn't matter. It might matter at your local show. Doesn't matter where it actually matters. You know what I mean? So if you come out and you look undeniably the best, that's always going to be better. So for you, it might mean a few months of an off season and you might be good to go. But for other people, it might be a year of an off season before you can think about prepping again. So it's really just going to depend on the individual. And that's why having a solid coaching relationship is so important. It's something that I and my coaches are very passionate about. Like somebody comes to us, hey, I want to do this show in 12 weeks. Sorry, we wish you the best. If you want to do a different show, like, we'd love to talk, but that's not going to happen. Exactly. So it's so important to know your boundaries as a coach. And I'm not going to make somebody's life worse just because they want to do this trivial show. If you want to be your best, then you can reach out to us.
Yeah. And that's an important point though. I know we're wrapping things.
No, it's fine.
Just brought something up. It's not a bad thing if you approach a coach, a prospective coach, and you're a client and you're trying to find the right fit for you. It's not a bad thing if someone tells you that show date is not going to be ready, is not going to be your show date. That means that person is looking out for you. That person wants you to have a good representation on stage.
Exactly.
So heed those words. Even if you don't go with that person, there's a reason they said that. You know?
Yeah, I don't want somebody to not compete. I want them to get on stage as soon as they can. But I'm also very realistic with what is this going to take? And that's where having a coach that is experienced and does have your best interests at heart is so important. And obviously you guys preach this message as well, just like we do. And having one show means nothing in the grand scheme of your career. I would rather you do 3 shows at a later date and absolutely crush them and maybe win. Like, that would be the whole goal. The goal is not to just get on stage, you know what I mean? And if that is your goal, that's a whole different conversation as well. But I would still argue with people like, hey, maybe we should have a different goal. You know, if you just want to like look better, let's do a photo shoot and like, let's plan that instead of like just trying to do the show, because there's a lot of psychological repercussions that actually happen when you get judged by strangers on what you look like that people are not prepared for.
Walk away from the judging table for their critiques and have some tears running down. And
and it's like, hey, it's not against you. Like, it's very hard. And then the second point I would just say is like, for training, less is more, but also just being more intelligent is more, you know what I mean? So if you're looking at your training, don't look at it as like, how much can I crush myself this week? And how much can I do in these supersets and these circuits and whatever. If you are a physique athlete or trying to improve your physique, it's usually not the best way to go. So try and get stronger, try and master a few of the harder lifts, progress on those. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a power lifter or anything crazy like this. It just means that like, you have to get better for you, and you actually are loading the muscles properly when you are training. So don't be afraid to train 4 days a week and really get after it and actually recover.
Yeah. Fantastic advice. All of it. Love it all. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
So you can go to our website, teamlocofit.com. On there, we have the contact button. You can email info@teamlocofit.com for any questions. We have different articles on there, podcasts on there. And then if you do want to apply for coaching, that is on there as well. The team social media is @teamlocofit on Instagram. Mine is @Laurin Conlin, LaurinConlan, and the same for my YouTube channel as well. We also have a podcast, Team Locofit Roundtable, where it's myself and the other coaches, and we are talking about all these things as far as coaches and athletes and really our perspective on what's going on.
All right. Thanks so much for being here. Guys, I hope you got something out of this today. We are going to be having our next guest, some guy named Paul, I think. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you might know him.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, I've heard of him a little bit. So we're going to have him on the next episode, so you're not going to want to miss this. So be sure to hit subscribe so you can see when it comes up. So thanks again, Laura. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Bye, Laurin.